Welcome to the program. I'm Mark Imperial. This segment's being brought to you by booksgrowbusiness.com. It's the place where busy professionals get their books done to educate consumers, grow their practices, and to leave a legacy. I'm doing a series of spotlights on remarkable advisors from across the country. Joining me on this segment is Todd Keffury. He's the founder of Cadenza Financial Planning out of Las Vegas. Todd, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks for having me.
Todd, tell us a little bit about your work and specifically, who are the types of folks that you help?
Sure. So I launched my firm back in June of this year after having spent almost 10 years in the industry, financial planning, working for three different firms. So I have had quite a bit of background as far as comprehensive financial planning. I was wary to get into the industry to begin with, way back 10 years ago, because I didn't come from a financial background. I came from a marketing, education. My undergraduate degree was in music. So, it was, for me, I was a bit wary because of a lot of the preconception, a lot of the fact that, most financial advisors, their primary role is as a salesperson, really selling products, selling investments, insurance products. So, I don't, not having that formal sales background, I was more interested in the finance piece, the sort of comprehensive planning. And I got a really good foundation with a couple of these different firms and really branched out into doing things that most advisors won't touch because they actually require work, as opposed to, the traditional model of, gathering assets and, charging a fee under, of the assets that are under management. I'm more interested in very tax centric, very tax focused. I'm created the firm specifically to speak to the 90+% of people that generally get ignored because they don't have enough assets for somebody at one of the big firms to talk to them. Those people still need financial planning and they still need advice. So where do they turn? So I'm part of kind of a bit of a revolution in the industry of sort of fee only. Really, to me, it doesn't matter how many assets that you have. I have clients that I work with that have no assets at all. However, they need financial planning. So there's other models that they can get planning through, and that's what Cadenza offers. So the thing that always kind of bugged me about the kind of traditional financial advisor firm and the advisor role is I think most people would be familiar with if they've worked with an advisor before and they've gone to them and said, I need advice on my taxes. They'll generally send you off into somebody else. They say, go talk to a CPA or, we can't give you tax advice. And I always thought, okay, this is the single largest expense that any of us ever faces by far in our entire life. And you're entrusting your financial planning to somebody who can't give you advice on that largest expense you ever face. There's an incongruity there to me. So that's why I got an enrolled agent designation. It's very much focused on helping individuals and small businesses, whereas CPAs tend to focus more on the kind of public accounting side. The enrolled agent is a lot more applicable to individuals, small businesses. The content is there. It's hugely valuable. And I mean, I have to undertake the CE every year, which normally is a pain, but the content on that is great because taxes change a lot more than the financial world, the investment world. So it's really engaging as far as that. So generally when I meet with clients for the first time, I don't want to see their investment statements. I want to see their tax returns and I want to see their trust, because those two things can give me a huge insight into what their financial picture is. Investments are one of the pillars of what Cadenza does as far as the planning, but it's much more comprehensive. And my goal for launching the firm was to create value as opposed to just extracting it, which a lot of the financial industry, unfortunately, is notorious for.
Interesting insight. So you mentioned, even helping folks that don't have assets. So that implies that there's kind of a misconception out there. A lot of people think, I need to have a whole bunch of assets to even bother with financial planning. So that sounds like a misconception. Can you tell me a little bit about like other, concerns that that particular part of the market, which is 90%, like you said, what concerns do they have? What don't they know that they should know about financial planning? And like, what are the biggest concerns on their mind?
Well, you're right about that. I don't know if it's so much alienation as it's a conception that, unless I have a ton of assets, somebody's not going to talk to me. And part of it, well, a large part of that is the way that the industry has been structured and the way that it's in markets. I mean, you've seen ads for, you probably get them in your Facebook feed or your email or whatever saying, if you have over $500,000, let's make a plan together. Well, somebody seeing that didn't have $500,000 in investment accounts is going to say, well, who's going to talk to me? So it's intimidating for one thing. It's the perception of accessibility is not there. And I combat that all the time because those are such entrenched preconceptions when it comes to working with somebody. That I hear, the sort of guilty feeling of, well, I know I should be doing something, but I don't know where to start. Or somebody has gone to an advisor before and have had a bad experience or haven't gotten the answers, or they go to their CPA at the end of the year or beginning of the following year to get their taxes done, and the CPA doesn't have much in the way of actual planning advice. I mean, it's kind of a reactive process as opposed to proactive. And what I've targeted a lot with my firm is working specifically with freelancers who are even more kind of marginalized when it comes to that traditional model. A lot of people who have jobs in full-time jobs may have some sort of access to an advisor that's through work, although most of the time it's pretty limited. Freelancers, on the other hand, are they're thrown to the wolves with all aspects of their business. They have to wear all the different hats. So I particularly am fond. I've been a freelancer for the majority of my working life, so I'm very familiar with it. And they're also the people that I can, that can really, really take advantage of the tax code, and I can help with that. So, yeah.
What about this recent pandemic? Has this changed the conversation at all from the strategies that you recommend, or is it just the perceptions that the people have? What have you heard about it, and how has the pandemic impacted your industry?
Sure. So I don't think it's impacted my industry terribly. I think that it's actually because so many people went remote. Before, it was not such a common thing, but now that there have been a couple of years of people functioning with remote meetings exclusively, they see, hey, we don't really need to have be in one place, or I'm not limited geographically to just working with people that are in my neighborhood. I can have Zoom meetings and get just as much done in this kind of environment. So a lot of people have switched to that model. I mean, I'm a completely virtual. I mean, I'll meet with somebody if they're local here, but there's, I have clients in California. I can work with people all over the place and just get just as much done. As far as the pandemic itself, I've dealt with a lot of people in the live event industry, and that was an industry that got hit particularly hard because obviously all those events were shut down. And depending on what your role was in that industry, you could have either made the shift to sort of a hybrid or a virtual environment, or you went and you looked for other work. At the end of the day, regardless of your industry or anything, of that nature, really what the whole goal of planning in general is to be able to weather the unexpected. I mean, that's really sort of the thing. I kind of pride myself on the fact that for the 10 years I've been doing this, whenever the markets have taken a hit or drop precipitously, I've never gotten a phone call from a client. And there's a reason for that. It's because right up front, when we're doing planning, we're going through their plan, I'm actually stress testing those types of scenarios with them so they can see what actually happens in terms of uncertainty. They know that the market's going to drop at some point, just a matter of time. If they can actually see that, and they can actually see that it doesn't break their plan, or it doesn't, impact them as much as they thought it was going to, they know what to expect. So that's part of a really, really important part about ongoing planning, is having that relationship, having that partnership, and really knowing what happens, and being able to adjust for, the unexpected sort of things.
You mentioned coming from a totally different field. What inspired you to get into financial planning and helping others with their financial houses? How did you get started?
So interestingly, it was my ex. I was at this point kind of a freelance copywriter. This was back in 2007. And my wife at that time said, "Oh, why don't you learn about the markets?" So I crash coursed myself for about 4 years. I was day trading. I for pretty much daily for about 4 years. So that was my, not having a finance background. That was my sort of intro into, the finance world. So, I did things like trade Apple stock for a month every single day. It's actually not terribly glamorous. It's almost like watching paint dry for most of the time. But it really got me into how the markets work. And honestly, I know how the markets work much better than most advisors out there who just haven't had that sort of hands-on participation in the market like I had. So that kind of, went into that discussion that I had mentioned earlier about being a bit wary of, making a practical sort of switch to being a financial advisor in that traditional sense. So I eventually came to the decision back 2012 and said, I have, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this the way that I want to do it. And the firm I started with, I had, there were, I think, 3 or 4 advisors, anywhere from 3 to 6 months in front of me. And none of them made it past 6 months. And these production goals were not terribly lofty, but it was the sort of thing where you had to kind of hit the ground running. And, I used my marketing and advertising background and education background, and just the simple fact that I had been a freelancer for so long, I think that transition was more successful for me, because I knew if I was going to rely on it succeeding, it was going to be completely, completely my work. And that's kind of, led me down this path of really like enjoying the work. I'm still, I had all the sales training I had was really, really valuable, but it's not my thing. I remember interviewing for a job several years ago at a really large bank for an advisor position. And they said to me, we're not really looking for a good advisor. We're looking for a good hustler. And I thought, I actually want to be a good advisor. I didn't choose this profession because I wanted to, wield my sales skills. I like the material. I like the planning. I like putting the pieces of puzzle together for people. And the variety is fantastic, because everybody's situation is different. The financial gurus that you hear on the radio or see on TV, they have great general advice, but everybody's situation is different. And what may be relevant for one person might not be the best idea for another person. That's why working with somebody who does, knows their specific situation is really the only way to go when it comes to kind of, getting a clear picture on that sort of thing.
Right on. So, Todd, for folks listening who would love to speak with you, how do they find you, connect with you, and learn more?
So they can find me through my website. It's cadenzafinancial.com. I'm on LinkedIn. My phone number is 702 546 6404. I've no obligation consultations. There's a Calendly link on my website. You can schedule a 30-minute consultation just to find out if there's a fit. There's times where there's not much I can do for somebody, and there's no sense in working together unless there's something I can help somebody with.
Todd, this has been terrific. I really appreciate you sharing your great insights with my audience today. And I wish you continued success for you and for all of your clients.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me, Mark.
That was Todd Keffury. He's the founder of Cadenza Financial Planning out of Las Vegas, Nevada. And this segment's been brought to you by booksgrowbusiness.com. It's the place where busy professionals get their books done to educate consumers, grow their practices, and to leave a legacy. That's all for now. I'm Mark Imperial, and thanks for joining me.